You clicked because you saw it. A small metal dome spinning on a rooftop, no wires, no panel, no bill, $18. That is the whole price. And that little spinning piece of tin is quietly doing a job you pay the power company to do every single month. I did not believe it either, not at first. For 30 years I paid every bill they mailed me, and I told myself that was just the cost of keeping a house cool in July. Then I spent a summer with Amish families outside Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I watched their barns breathe without a single watt of electricity. The first time I stood under one of those roofs near Gordonville, I kept looking for the fan. There was no fan, there was no motor, there was only rising heat and a shape their grandfathers had figured out 100 years ago. By the end of this, you will know the name of the Wisconsin professor who wrote all of it down in 1908, and you will understand why almost nobody has read his book since. And listen, this is the part that matters. If you already own your home, this works for you today, not in new construction, not someday, this weekend. So let me tell you what that spinning dome actually is. Because the name is deliberately boring, they call it a turbine ventilator, some folks call it a whirlybird. You have seen 1,000 of them and never once looked twice because it is designed to be invisible. It sits up on the ridge of the roof, and when heat rises up through your attic, that heat pushes against the curved fins and makes the head spin. When the wind blows across it, it spins faster. And every single time it turns, it pulls a column of scorching, trapped, dead air straight up and out of your house. That is it. No electricity going in, just heat and wind going in and hot air going out. A machine that runs on the very problem it solves. Now here is the number that made me sit down. On a sunny afternoon, the air trapped in a poorly vented attic does not sit at 80 or 90 degrees. It climbs to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. 150. That is hot enough to cook. And that superheated air is sitting 6 feet above your head, radiating down through your ceiling, into your bedrooms, into your living room, all night long. Your air conditioner is not fighting the weather outside, it is fighting the furnace you have living in your attic. Every dollar you hand the utility company in summer, a huge share of it is spent battling heat that a 5-pound piece of spinning metal could have thrown out of the house for free. And that is why I want you to reframe the word free right now. This device does not literally push electrons into your wall outlet. What it does is better. Every kilowatt your air conditioner does not have to burn because that attic furnace is gone. That is a kilowatt you generated for free. It behaves exactly like free power. It shows up as money that stays in your pocket instead of leaving it. Sunlight and rising heat go in one end and lower bills come out the other, forever, with no moving parts you ever have to plug in. That is the closest thing to a free power plant a regular person can bolt onto a roof for the price of a decent dinner. But I need to be honest with you, because I promised you I was skeptical, and I was. When I first saw one spinning, I thought, that little thing cannot possibly matter. And on its own, barely tightened, poorly placed, it almost does not. That is the trap. That is why so many people buy one, screw it on, feel nothing, and give up. Because the spinning dome is only half of a machine that the Amish understood completely and we forgot entirely. The other half is what makes it 100 times more powerful. Therefore, before I show you that other half, I have to take you back to a barn. The Amish did not invent the spinning turbine. What they preserved is older and deeper than any one gadget. Walk through Amish country in Holmes County, Ohio, and look up at the barns. On top of nearly every one, you will see a little wooden tower with slatted sides and a small roof. City folks think it is decoration. It is not decoration. It is called a cupola, and it is a machine. That cupola is the exit door for heat. Hot, moist air rises off dozens of animals, climbs to the peak of the barn, and escapes through those slats, and as it leaves, it drags fresh, cool air in through the low doors and the foundation vents. The whole barn breathes top to bottom, day and night, and no one ever flips a switch. I stood in one of those barns in August, dripping sweat outside, and inside it was cool and dry and moving. I asked the old man who owned it how it worked. He just pointed up and said, "The heat wants to leave. We only give it a door." Let me tell you exactly what I felt in that moment, because it changed how I saw my own home. I had just come from my own house back in the suburbs, where the air conditioner ran so hard in July that the outdoor unit never seemed to shut off. It roared, it dripped. It sent my bill past $250 a month, and still the upstairs bedrooms felt like an attic. I had accepted that as normal. I thought that was simply what summer cost. And then I am standing in a barn with no electricity at all, built by men who never paid a power bill in their lives, and it is cooler and drier and fresher than my modern, sealed, expensive house. I remember laughing out loud, and it was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of a man realizing he had been paying for something he could have had for free the whole time. The heat wants to leave. I have thought about that sentence for years, because it is the entire secret, and we have spent a century forgetting it. We took the doors out of our houses and replaced them with machines, we sealed everything tight, and then we bought a loud metal box to force cold air into a space that no longer knew how to breathe. The Amish never made that trade. And here is the part that should make you a little angry. The knowledge of how to make a house breathe on its own was not lost by accident. It was written down, in plain English, by an American scientist, and then it was quietly allowed to disappear. His name was Franklin Hiram King, and once you know his name, you will wonder why you never heard it. King was the professor of agricultural physics at the University of Wisconsin from 1888 to 1901. He was not a mystic, he was not a folk healer, he was a hard-nosed scientist with instruments and measurements, and he became obsessed with a simple question. How does air move through a building on its own, using nothing but temperature and gravity? He measured everything. He tracked how warm air rose, how cold air fell, how a properly shaped flue could pull a steady river of fresh air through a barn in the dead of a Wisconsin winter with the doors shut tight. In 1908, in Madison, Wisconsin, he self-published a book called Ventilation for Dwellings, Rural Schools, and Stables. Read that title again. Dwellings, homes. He did not write it just for barns, he wrote it for the house you are sitting in right now. King proved, with numbers, that you could heat, cool, and freshen a building using the natural physics of rising heat, and that the system he designed would move air reliably without a single moving part or a single watt of power. His gravity ventilation system spread across the dairy country of America, and for a while it was everywhere. Farmers built it into thousands of barns. It worked so well that it stayed the standard for decades. And then electricity got cheap. The power companies ran their lines out to every farm in every town, and a machine that moved air for free suddenly had a competitor that moved air for a monthly fee. Guess which one got promoted and which one got called old-fashioned? And I want you to understand who this man was, because it tells you how much we threw away. Franklin Hiram King was not some obscure crank scribbling in a shed. He was one of the most respected agricultural scientists in the country. He is the man widely credited with inventing the cylindrical tower silo, the tall round grain tower you see on every farm in America to this day. Look down any country road and you are looking at his design. After his years at the University of Wisconsin, he was appointed chief of the Division of Soil Management at the United States Department of Agriculture. This was a serious man at the top of American science. And when he turned his instruments on the simple question of how a building breathes, the whole country should have listened. For a while, it did, and then it chose the meter instead. Late in his life, King traveled across China, Korea, and Japan to study how farmers there had kept their soil alive and productive for 4,000 years without modern chemicals, and he wrote another book about it that came out in 1911, the year he died. The man spent his entire life documenting the free, durable, time-tested systems that ordinary people had used for centuries, right before those systems got bulldozed by anything with a price tag and a sales force. His ventilation work was just one more piece of buried treasure in a life full of it, and it is sitting in the public record right now for anyone who bothers to dig. That is the quiet part. Nobody burned King's book. They did not have to. They just stopped teaching it. They replaced free physics with a metered meter, and within 2 generations, a professor whose system once ventilated half the barns in the Midwest became a name almost nobody recognizes. The Amish kept building his principle into their barns and their homes because the Amish never signed up for the monthly fee in the first place. They had no reason to forget. We had every reason because someone was selling the alternative. Now, the turbine ventilator on your roof, the $18 Whirlybird, is nothing but King's exit door with a spinning head on it. The spinning version was introduced back in 1910 by a man named Samuel Ewart, and it has been refined ever since. There is even a United States patent number 4,379,972 issued on April 12, 1983 for an improved turbine ventilator design. This is not fringe, this is documented, patented, tested engineering. It is just engineering that nobody advertises because there is no monthly bill attached to it. You buy it once, it works for 20 years. That is a terrible business model for a utility company and a wonderful one for you. And this is exactly the kind of knowledge I have spent years digging back out of the ground, because King's book was only one door. When I started pulling on this thread, I found an entire buried archive of these systems. The Amish heating walls, the root cellars that hold a steady 50 degrees with no compressor, the pantry methods that keep food a year without power, the pest control that uses no poison. I gathered the best of it into a 3-volume collection called The Complete Field Vault, and there is a special, limited time offer on it running right now, linked in the description below. With a QR code on your screen, you can scan. What you are getting in this video is a single taste. The vault is the rest of the archive they let us forget. So let us get back to that other half of the machine, the half that turns a weak little spinning dome into something that actually cools your house. Because if you only remember one principle from this entire video, remember this one. A chimney does not work from the top, it works from the bottom. Everybody stares at the turbine on the roof because that is the part that moves, but the turbine is just the mouth. The power comes from the throat. Air cannot leave the top of your house unless an equal amount of air is allowed to enter at the bottom. If you seal the bottom, that spinning dome is trying to suck through a closed straw and it barely turns. It looks like it is working. It is doing almost nothing. The Amish barn understood this perfectly. The cupola on top is matched by the low vents down at the foundation, high out, low in. The heat leaves at the peak, and it pulls cool air in near the ground, and that creates a continuous current called the stack effect. The taller the distance between your low intake and your high outlet, the stronger the pull. Your house, from the crawl space or basement all the way up to the attic ridge, is one of the tallest stacks you own. It is a chimney you are living inside of, and almost nobody is using it. Here's what that means in practice, and this is where the money is. When you put a turbine ventilator on your roof, its power is not decided by the turbine. It is decided by where the fresh air comes in. If you crack the soffit vents, open a low window on the shaded north side of the house, or clear the intake vents down near your foundation, you complete the circuit. Suddenly, that $18 dome is not just clearing the attic. It is pulling a slow, steady river of cool, shaded ground-level air up through your entire home and flushing the day's heat out the top. No compressor, no refrigerant, no motor. Just the same physics king measured in Wisconsin over 100 years ago. Now I can already hear the objection, because I had it myself, and I hear it from every skeptical man my age. You are thinking, I tried an attic fan once, and it did nothing. Or, I have central air, so why would I care about an open window? Let me answer both, because the answer is the whole point. The reason your attic fan did nothing is almost certainly because nobody told you about the low intake. A powered attic fan with no fresh air coming in from below does not cool your house. It actually pulls conditioned air up out of your living space and can pull dangerous fumes back down your own chimney. It was working against you because it was only half a machine. And the reason this still matters if you have central air is simple. This does not replace your air conditioner on the worst day of August. It means your air conditioner spends far less of the year running at all, because the free system carries the load on every mild evening, every cool night, every shoulder month in spring and fall when you never needed to be paying in the first place. You are not throwing away your comfort. You are refusing to pay for it when you do not have to. Now, if you already own a house and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. Everything I have described works on a home that already exists, and it works best on the very homes this audience tends to own, the solid houses built before 1980. Those older homes were often built before everything got sealed up tight and handed over to a central air unit. They frequently already have the bones of King's system hiding in them. You may already have soffit vents. You may already have a gable vent on the end of the attic. You may already have foundation vents around a crawl space. Those are not flaws. Those are the low intake doors of a breathing house that somebody stopped using. Here's what you can do this weekend on the home you already own with no contractor and no new construction. Go up and look at your attic on a hot afternoon. If it feels like an oven, your house is being cooked from above every single day, add or clean out the turbine ventilator on the high part of the roof, and this is the step everybody skips. Make sure the low intakes are open and clear. Clear the leaves and the paint and the old insulation out of your soffit vents. Unblock the foundation vents. Open a low shaded window at night. Give the heat a door at the top and give the cool air a door at the bottom. That is the whole system. You are not renovating. You are simply waking up a machine that was already built into your home and then forgotten. Let me put the money in front of you plainly, because this audience does not respond to vague promises, and neither do I. That $18 turbine is not a rounding error against your bill. When your attic is sitting at 150 degrees, that heat radiates down, and your air conditioner runs longer, cycles more often, and wears out faster. Drop that attic temperature by throwing the trapped air out the top, and your cooling system simply does not have to fight as hard. Folks who complete the circuit the right way, high exhaust matched with low intake, routinely feel the upstairs rooms become livable again without touching the thermostat. Now do the arithmetic on your own life. If it trims even a fraction off a $200 summer bill, month after month, year after year, that single piece of tin pays for itself in a matter of weeks and then keeps paying quietly for the next 2 decades. There is no financing, there is no service contract, there is no technician who has to come back. It is the rarest thing in modern American life, a machine you buy once and never feed again. And that is the deeper reason this knowledge matters. Beyond any one summer, a house that runs on a monthly fee is a house that can be squeezed. When the rates go up, and they always go up, you have no choice but to pay, because you have handed the job of keeping your family comfortable over to a company with a meter. But a house that breathes on its own cannot be squeezed the same way. The physics does not send you a bill. The sun does not raise its rates. Rising heat has cost exactly $0 since the beginning of time, and it always will. That is not just savings, that is independence. That is the difference between a man who owns his comfort and a man who rents it. And here is where the tension gets sharper, because now I have to tell you why so few people know any of this, and it is not an accident of history. When electricity got cheap, an entire industry grew up around the idea that comfort must be purchased continuously. Think about the business logic. A house that cools itself for free is a house that stops paying. So the systems that got funded, promoted, financed, and written into the standard way we build homes were the systems with a meter attached. The ones that ran on a bill. Passive ventilation, the King system, the breathing house, none of that had a lobby, none of that had a salesman knocking on your door offering easy monthly financing. It just quietly worked for free, which is precisely why it got pushed to the margins, while the expensive version got called modern. And it did not stop at simply forgetting. Think about how the rules for building a modern home actually get written. They get written in committees. And the committees that decide what counts as a proper, code-approved way to cool and ventilate a house are not filled with Amish farmers or with the ghost of Professor King. They are filled with representatives of the industries that manufacture and sell mechanical equipment. The people who profit from the metered machine helped write the standard that made the metered machine the default. Passive gravity ventilation, the free system, was never in the room to defend itself. So over the years, it got quietly reclassified from the smart way to build into the old way, the quaint way, the thing your grandfather did before we knew better. Except your grandfather did know better. He just did not have a lobbyist. I am not asking you to believe a conspiracy. I am asking you to follow the money the way I finally did after 30 years of paying. Ask yourself a simple question. Who benefits when you forget that heat wants to leave and cool air wants to rise up to take its place? Who benefits when a professor's free system gets called quaint and a metered machine gets called an upgrade? The answer is never you. The answer is always the entity collecting the monthly fee. And once you see it that way, you cannot unsee it. Every hot summer bill starts to look less like the weather and more like a choice somebody made for you a long time ago in a room you were never invited into. Now, let me stack one more layer on this, because the same physics does more than cool. King's book was titled For Dwellings, and he understood that a breathing house is a healthier house in every season. That superheated attic in summer becomes a trap for moisture in winter. When warm, damp air from your kitchen and your bathrooms and your own breathing rises into a sealed attic in cold weather, it hits the cold underside of the roof and it condenses. That moisture soaks your insulation and rots your rafters from the inside. A house that cannot breathe is a house that slowly poisons its own bones. The gravity ventilation King measured did not just move heat out in July. It moved moisture out in January, and it protected the structure of the building year-round. The Amish barns last 100 years for exactly this reason. They are never allowed to hold their own damp breath. I saw this with my own eyes in a farmhouse near Millersburg, Ohio, in the middle of winter. The family kept their home comfortable and dry with wood, heat, and open flues, and there was no clammy, stuffy, closed-up feeling that you get in a modern sealed house in January. The windows were not sweating, the corners were not black with mold, the air felt alive. I asked the woman of the house about it, and she told me, matter of fact, that a house has to breathe or it gets sick, same as a person. She did not know she was quoting a University of Wisconsin professor from 1908. She did not need to. It had been handed down to her grandmother to mother to daughter as plain common sense, while the rest of us paid contractors to seal every last crack and then paid again for machines to undo the damage. And there is a second confirmation of King's principle that comes straight out of modern university engineering, so you do not have to take an old book's word for it. Researchers studying what they call solar chimneys, which is King's stack effect, scaled up and put in the sun, have measured that pulling a steady current of air across a hot surface can drop that surface temperature by around 15 degrees. In studies of rooftop systems, that same passive airflow boosted the efficiency of what was mounted on the roof dramatically. The lesson is identical to the one the old man in Ohio gave me. Moving air is the cheapest, most powerful cooling force we have, and it costs nothing but a door at the top and a door at the bottom. So by now, you understand the machine. You understand the whirlybird is just an exit. You understand the real power is the low intake that completes the circuit. You understand that a man named King proved all of this with instruments over a century ago, and that the Amish never stopped using it while the rest of us were sold a meter. But I promised you something at the very beginning. I promised you a secret finale. A specific technique buried in the old research that almost nobody alive is using, that you can do this weekend, and that flips everything you think you know about hot air on its head. Here it is. Everyone believes the same thing about a hot house. Hot air rises, so you vent from the top. Put the exit as high as you can and let the heat float out. That is what every contractor will tell you, and it is only half right, and the half it gets wrong is the half that matters. Because when I went deep into the King system and into the old United States Department of Agriculture material that grew out of his work, including Farmer's Bulletin number 1393, Principles of Dairy Barn Ventilation, I found a detail that stopped me cold. In King's true gravity system, one of the exhaust flues does not start at the ceiling, it starts at the floor. Read that again. The outlet pulls from the floor. King and the researchers who followed him discovered something the eye does not expect. The stalest, heaviest, most fouled air in an occupied space, the air loaded with carbon dioxide and moisture, does not politely float to the ceiling. It is denser, and it settles low, and it pools down along the floor. So King built his exhaust to draw from the very bottom of the room, then carry that dead air all the way up through a tall flue and out the roof. He removed the worst air first, from where it actually collects, and by doing it he created a far stronger, more constant draft than a ceiling vent ever could. It was called removal of foul air from the floor, and it is one of the most counterintuitive, elegant ideas in the entire history of building, and we buried it. Here is what that means for your house this weekend, and this is the finale technique, simple enough to do with what you already own. Do not only vent from the top, give your breathing house a low draw. On a hot evening, When the outside air has cooled, but your house is still holding the day's heat, open a window at the lowest point of your home, in the basement, in a walkout, on the shaded ground floor north side, and open the turbine or the attic path at the very top. Now, you are not just skimming heat off the ceiling, you are pulling the entire stale, settled, heavy layer of hot air up and out from the floor from where it truly pools, and dragging cool night air across every inch of your living space as it goes. Let me make it even more concrete so there is no guessing. Pick the two ends of your house. The top end is the turbine on the roof, or the highest gable vent, or even a single upstairs window on the shaded side thrown wide open. The bottom end is the coolest, lowest, most shaded opening you have, a basement window, a walkout door, a ground floor window on the north face where the sun never hits. Open both at the right time of day when the outside air is cooler than the air trapped inside. Then stand in the middle of your home and feel it. You will feel a current start, slow at first, then steady, a real river of air moving from the low door across your rooms and up and out the top. That current is doing the exact work you have been paying a compressor to do, and the taller the gap between your two doors, the harder it pulls, which is why a two-story house with a basement is practically a chimney waiting to be switched on. Close the doors during the hot part of the day to hold the cool you banked, and open them again when the evening air drops. That is the rhythm the Amish live by, and it is free. People run expensive whole house fans to fake this effect. King got it for free with a shape and a flue in 1908. The heat wants to leave. Give it a door at the top, and the part everyone forgets, give the heaviest air its own door down at the bottom. That is the piece that was taken from us. Not a gadget, a principle. The knowledge that a house is a living, breathing chimney, and that you already own every part of the machine except the understanding of how to switch it on. It existed. A scientist measured it and wrote it in a book in Madison in 1908. The industry that sells you comfort by the month let it fade because free is a terrible product. One community, the Amish, kept building it into their barns and their homes because they never agreed to pay the monthly fee. And now, tonight, it belongs to you again. And notice how it fits together, all of it, into one simple truth. The cupola on the Amish barn, the gravity flue King measured in Madison, the $18 turbine spinning on some stranger's roof right now, the open basement window on a cool evening. They are not four different tricks. They are one idea expressed four ways, the idea that heat moves on its own if you simply let it, and that a house was always meant to breathe. Everything after that was just people who figured out how to charge you for the air. Think about what that really means. You have been handing over money, summer after summer, year after year, to solve a problem that a 5-pound spinning dome and an open window at the bottom of your house could have solved for free. That is not a small thing. That is decades of your money spent renting comfort that your own home was built to provide. But you are not that man anymore. Now you know the heat wants to leave. Now you know where the real power comes from. And now you know the one detail, the floor-level draw, that even most of the people selling ventilation have never heard of. If you are the kind of person who believes that real, useful knowledge has been quietly pushed aside so that somebody else could keep collecting a fee, then you already know what to do next. This is not about a channel. This is about a group of us, quietly recovering the things that were taken, one forgotten machine at a time. So here is my question for you, and I want you to actually answer it, because this audience is too quiet, and this knowledge deserves a conversation. Go look at your own roof. Do you already have one of those little spinning domes up there, ignored for years? And did you have any idea it was doing King's work the whole time? Tell me in the comments. Type it out. Yes or no, and what state you are in. So we can see just how many of us have been sitting under this the whole time and never knew. And if this opened your eyes even a little, subscribe and stand with the people who are digging this knowledge back out of the ground, because I am not close to done. The next one I am working on is the Amish heating wall, a section of a house that soaks up the winter sun all day and quietly releases that warmth into the rooms long after dark. No furnace, no fuel, based on a design a man patented back in 1881 and that almost everybody has forgotten. That wall held a family warm through Pennsylvania winters on nothing but sunlight, and the design has been sitting in the record for over 140 years while we paid for oil and gas and never knew it existed. The heat wants to move. All these years, we have just forgotten how to give it a door. Stay with me, and we will keep opening them one buried machine at a time until you never have to pay for what your own home was built to give you for free.